Hi, this is Glenn Loury. I want you guys to know that The Glenn Show is moving to its own YouTube channel. If you don't want to miss new episodes, then I'd encourage you, please follow the link in the description and subscribe to The Glenn Show at the new YouTube channel. You can also help us out and help the channel grow by commenting and by hitting the like button, the YouTube algorithm. So that's the announcement. Stay tuned. There's much more to come.
Before
Thanks.
we do, I have a meta question. I mean, because we're going to get to this question of interpreting the New Deal,
right?
And the role of, to the extent that blacks were excluded, that plays in contemporary racial disparity. We're going to get to that question, but I have to ask this question, and this is about historiography. This is about the thing that I know you care so much about, having spent a life in history.
Yes.
And the question I want to ask is, I would have thought that the phenomenon that you are describing of contemporary political passions coloring the interpretation of the past would be a problem of journalism, but not a problem of academic historical scholarship. I would have thought that the very point of having a university's history department, with all of the tenure and all of the peer review and all of the sense of the ages, going all the way back, I would have thought that the very point of that was to avoid the disease that you have put your finger on, to be above the passions of the moment. So I have to ask, what has happened to history if the disease is such as you say?
Well, I can answer that. I think that was thought to be the point. I think that objectivity was defended by a lot of very important and very great historians on a lot of topics. For instance, there was a highly politicized controversy in the 1920s and 30s over who started the First World War. Germany had been blamed for it in the Versailles Treaty. That gave Germany and German historians a huge interest in trying to prove that that wasn't so. Some Americans sided with the Germans, more or less. That went on and on. Eventually, some very great works were written, including some by a German later, showing that, in fact, they were very largely responsible. But it's always been a struggle. But what's happened, Glenn, is the idea that there isn't really such a thing as objective truth, that people's thoughts and beliefs are a function of their demography, their race, their gender, possibly even their sexual orientation. And therefore, the goal of academia is not to establish one objective truth. The goal is to allow the voices that have not been heard enough up until now to be heard. And it becomes a taboo to question the validity, in particular, of what a member of an oppressed group says about their history. And that is the dominant ideology now. So that's what delivered the coup de grace to the ideal of objectivity, I would say.
Okay, and I think you do say so at length in your memoir, A Life in History.
Yes.
As I recall.
Yes, you're right.
They're going to call us old men, though, David. They're going to say we don't get it. That it's, and not just because you're white, and because I'm not white. but I'm old. I'm old like you. No, I mean they're going to say we just don't get it, and I don't know what there is to be done. I feel like I'm inveighing against it's quixotic, this windmill tilt that we're engaged in trying to defend objectivity.
Well, we could say that, Glenn, but look, I have gotten so much out of my indirect contact with you and John McWhorter over the last few years, and part of it has been the other people I've been introduced to, such as Coleman Hughes. I mean, we haven't been introduced in a face-to-face sense, although I hope that will happen, but I listen to him as regularly as you now. And now I discovered Samuel Cronin, who wrote a piece that we both read, and what is so wonderful is that you have young people like that. And actually, Coleman Hughes is very good at finding them on his podcast. He finds them all over the place. who have been through this educational system where this is what they were being given. But it's a wonderful thing about human nature. You can find this in Solzhenitsyn too, in the First Circle, that there are some young people who just won't swallow it. And for whatever reason, well, it's kind of Orwellian. They are not going to listen if you tell them 2 + 2 = 5. And that is what gives me real hope for the future, is that we are still turning out people like that, despite what has happened in the educational system.
Thank you. And yeah, I'm with you 100%. And I feel blessed to actually get revitalized by my relationships with some of these young people.
Sure.
But okay.